But yeah, so everyone, welcome back. We have Jeremmmy Taggart here, uh, broker, realtor, investor, house hack specialist in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But welcome back, Jeremy.
Thanks. Glad to be back on.
Yeah, so we've connected over social media and we've kept in touch and play fantasy football together. But I saw something that he was talking about recently that he actually last time he was on my channel, he was talking about his last house hack. He's going to retire from it, and that was the final one. And kind of like Tom Brady, he came out of retirement to do one more. So I want him to kind of maybe touch on that and what was the thought process behind that.
Yeah, something combination of really good deal, location of it, and kind of life circumstances, I guess. Because me and my fiance, we're still waiting to see. She gets her doctorate here in December, so we're waiting to see. We don't know where we're going to be long term as far as buying a house, living there. So like I've just been in my current house hack now up until this point, and the 1 year mark from number six passed. So I was eligible, I guess, again to do another one. Um, and then really good deal popped up that I kind of couldn't pass up either way. So it was a matter of use hard money on it, go that route, or just house hack it again, put 5% down, get the seller assist, basically cover all the closing costs, essentially get it for free because I have an agent commission as well.
Mhm.
So whenever you're kind of in that situation, it almost becomes a no brainer in a way. And it was only like it's like 2 or 3 minutes from where I'm currently living. So it won't be really that bad as far as moving there. So kind of like all of those combined, I was like, might as well just house hack it because it won't be too bad of a move. It's right there. I My cash to close was less than my commission on it as an agent representing myself. So it's like basically just acquiring a free house. And the numbers were still good to the point where like the market rents were covering the whole mortgage basically while living there. So it was cash, at least break even, cash flow positive from day one, basically. So really just acquiring another that it's just so powerful because like you can buy these $500,000 buildings that are gonna have crazy appreciation, loan pay down from a percentage standpoint compared to like all the more you put down to buy it. So it's just a great concept. I think I couldn't really pass it up and decided to do a seventh here, which I don't know if anybody has ever done seven in the country, but I'd love to know honestly if there
Yeah.
is. There's not way to keep track of that, but
No, but I think that's kind of a very popular way to get into real estate right now. Is a lot of people are trying to figure out how to get around these higher interest rates and elevated prices. And I think house hacking is a great way to get started. And you're on your seventh one, so I'm sure even from the first one to now, I mean, you've learned quite a bit. I mean, I'm sure it hasn't been a smooth process for all of them.
yeah, I mean, just real estate in general, you're going to have some struggles along the way. But I think at the grand scheme of things, it's powerful stuff when you can acquire a decent amount of units for pretty much nothing out of pocket at the end of the day, compared to if you were to have to save up down payments 20-25%, pay the closing costs. Like I think between the seven that I've done, probably around 100,000 was all I needed out of pocket over the course of 8 years. So not a lot of money compared to what you're getting. Like I think probably the combined value of those seven that I did is well over $2 million, almost $3 million for $100,000 out of pocket over 8 years. So I think it's just really powerful, and I think it's something that definitely still works in today's market where it's getting a little trickier just because of the financing and the fact you need a place to live anyhow. It's just especially if you can find something where the numbers make sense on it in a good area. I think it's one of the few things that still definitely works in any market, really, in my opinion.
So how did you come across this deal? Was it on the MLS or like off market or?
So it was on the MLS. Um, you probably know. Does your MLS have a like multi-unit section, residential section, commercial section?
Yep.
So we have a commercial section on the MLS, which nobody really looks at. Because if you're looking for a commercial property, you're more than likely working with a commercial broker. not a residential broker that has access to the MLS. That's more small multifamily, single family for the most part. Like if you're looking for an apartment building, you might work with the MLS agent, like a smaller apartment building, but like most of that stuff is if you're looking like say a large apartment building, any sort of commercial triple net lease type deal, you're probably working with a commercial broker. So at least in the Pittsburgh market, there seems to be a gap between the two. Like they don't really like you have CoStar, LoopNet, Crexy, and all that. Like they're kind of separate from kind of the residential space. So basically, what check that just because the fact that sometimes you will find stuff on there. Hold on, let me turn my do not disturb. I'm getting. Anyways, the I checked the hot sheets on the commercial, and I saw this property pop up, and it was close to where I live now, so I know the area. And I looked at it; it was just one picture of the outside, nothing else. And then I looked at it, I'm like, that's a triplex. Because normally, like 2 to 4 units, you're listing in on multi units, and that's where you're going to get the most eyeballs on this. Because even if you are looking for a 2 to 4 unit, your agent is not going to set you up on a commercial search. Like it just, they're two separate searches. So I saw that it was a 3 units, 3 bedrooms per unit. It didn't even say it was 3 bedrooms per unit. It just said like 3 townhomes with central air. That was the description. No photos or anything. And then I didn't see it pop up on the multi units either. So I'm like, probably nobody's going to see this property. And even if they are looking in the commercial section, they're probably not looking for a 2 to 4 unit because if they were, they'd be set up like on a multi-unit search. So I got in there as soon as I could. Didn't know what the inside was going to look like, and I get there and the place is like in great shape, great layouts. Turned out to be 3 bedroom units, which rent for pretty good chunk of change. Townhome style with central air, so like really nice property. And then I knew that the value was like I think he listed it at 395. I knew right off the bat that like triplexes with 3 bedroom units in decent shape are worth at least 450 in this market, if not more. So basically came in right away. I actually offered lower because I knew nobody else was even seeing this property. I was the only one that actually got into it. And then the broker, it seemed like he didn't really want to be bothered with showing it or having to deal with marketing and stuff. So it turned out like I came in with a lower offer. They didn't want to take it right off the bat because it was kind of right after it listed, but I knew the situation, so I figured we probably could get a discount because I know really other competition. And then it turned out like it basically turned into him kind of working on my side to get the sellers to accept it because he, like I said, he didn't really want to be bothered with the listing. So they ended up accepting list price, full seller assist. They paid the transfer tax. So I had all my closing costs covered and then some. And then we ended up closing. Like I said, my cash to close was less than my commission because the lender that I used was a local bank and they allow the seller assist to cut into the down payment, which normally, like your government loans, won't allow you to do that, but the local bank did. So it ended up, I actually got paid to acquire it. And like I said, there's equity in it because my mortgage now is like 375 and I know it's worth at least 450. And then the rents slightly below market rents now, but whenever the leases come up for renewal, I'll get them up closer to market. The market rents are higher than the market rents from the other 2 units are higher than the unit I would be living in. So kind of I guess an unfair advantage being an agent looking at that stuff because like if I was just working with an agent, I probably wouldn't have seen that because I wouldn't have been set up on a commercial search. So it was just kind of a good. I just happened to be looking at I have the hot sheet set up for the commercial section for instances like that. Just kind of keeping tabs on things and jumping on properties that I know are a good deal that kind of other people might not have seen. So that was kind of how that played out.
Yeah, so I guess it sounds like you're still finding deals on the MLS, and even though, everybody has doom and gloom out there, people are still making things happen and transactions are happening. And like, what are you seeing in Pittsburgh? Are you like how's your um transaction side going for your business right now?
I think you're still seeing somewhat of a gap between seller expectations and buyer expectations, which I think is an issue everywhere. But that gap is shrinking to the point where when rates really started going up the end of last year, transactions slowed down a ton, and especially a little bit kind of at the beginning of this year. But I think that gap is shrinking to the point where buyers are getting okay with the higher rates. Sellers are realizing we're not in the crazy fantasy land market that we were in the past few years, to the point where we're getting more back to normal. Still not as many transactions happening just because there still is that gap, and it's a little tougher. Like with us, we work with investors, so it's a little tougher to kind of make the numbers work, especially for a lot of newer people that are more cash flow focused, to make them work at the higher rates. So we're not seeing as many transactions, but it's ramping up back to the point where I think it's getting more back to normal market compared to what it was. But I think anytime you have interest rates go from 3 to 8 within a year, 14, 15 months, it's kind of going to be a shock to the system, to the point where you are going to see transactions go down. But we're still getting deals done. And I think like prime example of what I just said, mismarketed properties. There's always instances that are kind of outliers where you can find good deals for one reason or another, to the point where you can't just make a blank statement and say like there aren't deals out there because rates are higher. There's still stuff that works. Like we're getting good crop properties for our clients, and it just it might be a little tougher. You might have to be a little more patient, but it definitely still seeing properties that make sense from an investment standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's not so much. I mean, I'm sure, the rates do matter, but it's more the rate of change. So now like people are kind of like you're saying, people are kind of adjusting to it. It went up so quickly that people were kind of weary of what's going to happen. They were uncertain. But now that things look like it's stabilizing somewhat, they're kind of getting used to the higher rates. And, like you're saying, there's seller's concession and people are working around these higher rates and the sellers and buyers are kind of realizing what position they're in now.
Yeah, it's just I think real estate market just takes time. Like it's not as quick to change based on the news like the stock market might
Yeah.
be. So it's just one of those things that, like I said, patience is key, and kind of letting things play out, but getting back closer to a normal market for sure.
Yeah, I think that's what's hard too. And in today's society, everyone's like these instant gratification or
Oh
microwave
yeah.
society, right? And they want instant results. So like you're saying, it's not like the stock market where things move quickly. Real estate is slower. It's a little bit lagging sometimes the data, and it's more emotions involved a lot of times. So it kind of takes time for people to adjust to what's going on around them.
Yeah, and the expectations to kind of reset from what we were at with, which was just it wasn't a sustainable market anyhow. So
Yeah.
coming from that, it's just reframing the perspective, I guess, as well. Takes
Yeah, so
time.
so you're on your seventh house hack. Are they all like you were talking about? Are they all traditional, like duplex, triplexes, or have some been like, single family homes where you've rented out rooms?
All of them were 2 to 4s. I did one single family where I rented out rooms.
Mhm. How was that experience? Was it that?
Well, it was with my girlfriend,
Oh,
so I
okay.
guess we split it.
Oh, okay.
Well, fiance now. But we split the mortgage basically. The mortgage was like $420.
So at the time she was your girlfriend, or was it
Yeah,
you just
at the time she was
she was
my
a
girlfriend.
renter and then you became
Yeah, because I had bought it myself and we split the mortgage. So that's how that one worked out. And it actually turned into a burr. It was like a burr slash live in and rent slash house hack type thing. I bought it more because there was equity involved too. So like that was when I did my first kind of burr, got a good chunk of change on the cash out refinance that then helped me kind of build the portfolio moving forward as well. So it was kind of a hybrid, I guess.
So you kind of touched on it also. Like, do you think working with local banks is also very important or helpful for investors?
Yeah, like I know the local bank that I work with the most here, like they're beating everybody right now on interest rates and fees, like by a long shot. they're even lower on investor loans than like Fannie Freddie government loans are on owner occupant loans, which is crazy. So having that connection, and then especially if you build a relationship with them, they're willing to be flexible kind of with the loan products because they keep them in house. A lot of these local banks, they don't sell them. It's kind of up to them how they underwrite them and the loan products and stuff. So like the one I did, like I said, they allowed the seller's assist to cut into my down payment, which you're never going to be able to do that with a government loan. So cool stuff like that. And they offer unconventional products like they'll do a 5% down owner occupied loan on 2 to 4 units, which previously didn't exist until they're actually rolling that out now with the government loans, the 5% down on 2 to 4s. But before, your only option was basically FHA for a low down payment 2 to 4 unit. After FHA, you kind of have to either do 15% down for a duplex or 25% down for a 3 to 4 unit, unless you did. I think there's a Fannie Mae home style loan too, but that has more restrictions. But basically, what having a bank allowed me to basically rinse and repeat of these house hacks because they'll allow you to do as many as you want and still do 5% down. So having access to that is huge. It's going to depend on your local market, but that was kind of having that definitely made a big difference in me building my portfolio over time. And to this day, having access to them and their kind of good loan products I otherwise wouldn't have access to. And I'm sure there's a lot of them in other local markets. Just as a matter of finding out who does that in your market and building a relationship with them is key.
So you kind of touched on it. Are you looking to relocate, you think, in the near future? I mean, when your fiance kind of figures out her situation, and is that something you guys are looking into right now?
Relocate, but still in the Pittsburgh
Oh,
area.
okay.
So her parents live about 45 minutes north of downtown. So we want to be close to them. That's that's a main thing. And then so she's kind of be going to be looking just in this general region because I mean she likes her job now. There's no problems with it. It's just obviously she can get a better position with the doctorate, but wanting to stay probably in the general region, but where that may be, we're not 100% sure yet, but it'll depend on kind of where the opportunities are.
Oh, okay. So right now it's what is it? November 17th. So how's the weather getting in Pittsburgh right now?
We've been lucky thus far. Like I think it's like the 50s today. It's starting to get to that time of year where you don't see the sun as much, if at all. But next week is kind of where it looks like it's getting to the 20s. So I'm sure from then until probably February, we're gonna have cold, dreary. But I guess that's what makes the home prices cheap here. But I
Okay,
can't complain too much.
so as you know, as an investor, do you see this as a time to keep looking for deals or kind of, take a break for the winter and start over in the new year?
I think it's a good time if you're actively looking because a lot of people kind of tap out Thanksgiving to New Year's, especially during the holidays. You just have less people kind of actively looking. They're more laid back, kind of want to break a little bit. So I've definitely seen a lot of opportunities in previous years, kind of during this time period. Well, I guess except for the last few years because it was just crazy competitive 24/7, 365. But typically in a normal market, you do see more opportunities as you get into the holidays. If you're actively looking, it can be a good time to find some good deals for sure.
Yeah.
Specifically here when it's cold, and a lot of people don't want to leave the house when it's cold. So that plays into it as well, along with the holidays, kind of a double whammy there.
Yeah. So that was kind of the double-edged sword for me where, I bought a decent amount of properties in the winter months and, yeah, like you're saying, you can find good deals, motivated sellers. But on the flip side, for me, I didn't really, I probably should have known better, but I didn't realize how cold it got in Pittsburgh. And like you're saying, some people don't want to move or, they want to stay in their home. So for me, it actually took a lot longer to find tenants for me to place in my units. So that was just something where, like you're saying, you find good deals, but at the same time, just be prepared that it might take a little bit longer to find tenants, unless unless you find such a great deal that you can put your rents, below market or to get someone there in there quickly. But that was my experience.
Yeah, that's a slow time for rentals here. You definitely see kind of a dip in rents, and it takes longer to find qualified tenants. There's definitely people that are applying and looking. I think the professional tenants wait until this time of year to try to get a landlord that's desperate, at least from my experience. But they come out of the woodwork. But for the most part, it definitely is slower until about probably February, at least at the minimum. People just they don't want to move in the wintertime for the most part if they have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad I saw that you came back, or you came out of retirement for this house hack. And you kind of touched on it too, like these new rules coming out for the down payments for multifamilies. Do you think that's gonna even make it harder to get multifamily units in Pittsburgh?
I think the fact that it doesn't have a self-sufficiency test, which FHA has, do you want me to kind of
Yeah, yeah, go
describe what that is? The self-sufficiency test now, it just applies for 3 and 4 unit properties if you're buying a house hack with an FHA loan. Basically, they're going to require it to cash flow. If it doesn't, they're not going to give you the loan. So I think it's just like they have a formula for it. They take 75% of the market rents of the property of all the units, and that has to be higher than the mortgage payment, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And if it's not, they won't do the loan. So it's kind of a way, like I said, a built-in cash flow check to prevent people from buying properties that technically can't sustain themselves if they say all the units go vacant. I think they're just trying to prevent people that FHA is normally a first time home buyer loan. It's how it was designed. They don't want people getting in over their heads, I guess, buying 3 to 4 unit buildings and not knowing how to manage them and kind of things getting out of control. So that was always a somewhat, it basically provided a ceiling on these 3 to 4 unit buildings to the point where they couldn't go over a certain price. Otherwise, you can't buy them with an FHA loan. You got to put 20 to 25% down. And when you only have to put 3.5, that's going to drive the prices up because people are going to be willing to pay more if they're only 3.5% down. So I don't know if you've noticed it, but like duplexes, you see way higher dollar dollar amount per unit in the nicer owner occupant areas because there is no self-sufficiency test. So like we've seen crazy prices by Pittsburgh standards for duplexes in like the A class areas, but we didn't really see it as much for the 3 to 4 units because of the self-sufficiency test. It just wouldn't meet the self-sufficiency test if the price got so high. But these new loans, the 5% down conventional, don't have self sufficiency. So if your debt to income can support the higher loan amount, they'll still give you the loan. So I think we're going to see, at least in the more owner occupant type areas, people that were buying the duplexes, people that aren't really looking at it from a numbers investment standpoint, really just buy a 3 to 4 unit property and overpay for it by investor standards because they want to live in the neighborhood. They're not looking at it based on cash return on investment. They're looking at it. This is what I'm paying for rent. If I buy this 3 unit or 4 unit, my mortgage payment, but covered by the supplemented by these rents, it's going to be less than what I pay in rent. So I think we're going to see in the nicer areas, the 3 to 4 units kind of go through the roof like the duplexes have. So I think like that's going to change the most, especially if you can, from an investor standpoint, if you can get into a neighborhood that's kind of on the border of being an owner occupant area, like more less of a rental area, but more like everyone that lives there wants to own basically nicer neighborhoods. If you can catch something that's kind of right on the cusp of that and turns into an owner occupant, I think there's a lot of value in the 3 to 4 units now that previously wouldn't have been there because of that ceiling from the self-sufficiency test. So I think that's something that we'll see going forward here, in my opinion, at least, is the prices of those in certain areas kind of going through the roof like the duplexes have, just because of the financing.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. That was going to be kind of my next question, how you were talking about so let's say someone bought a multifamily, but they didn't, the rent didn't cover the mortgage completely, and so they were still coming out of pocket. Do you think that can still be a win for people.
I think compared to renting, yeah, because you're not really that much out of pocket, and especially if you're getting the appreciation, you're getting the loan paid down. It's at the end of the day, it's not as optimal, I guess, as it could be, but you're getting an asset for 3.5, 5% down, even if you're negative cash flow, you're building equity through appreciation and loan pay down, and you're getting depreciation at the same time that otherwise you would be renting. And I think it depends on your timeline too. Like if you're just doing this for a year and you're not really planning on holding the property, or you can't sustain a property that might be negative cash flow, it might be better off renting. But I don't think the average Joe is really going to think like that as much. So I'm sure you're going to see a lot of them where maybe they buy it for a year or two, live there, and then sell it, thinking that it's better than renting, whereas renting might have been the better move if you have a short timeline, basically. So I think it depends on the individual situation too. Like I said, not everybody, if they are buying something that technically is negative cash flow after they move out as a long-term rental, probably if they can't support the say a few $100 a month negative cash flow until it starts to be positive cash flow, it might not be the best move. But you tend to not think in those scenarios if you're just an average Joe looking to buy a property to live in, not being really as concerned with the numbers on the investment. But case by case basis, depending on their timeline and individual situation, I would say.
Yeah, I think many people get caught up in like they have to make money, from the investment off the bat. Whereas, like you're saying, that maybe their rent would be, well, like in Hawaii, maybe your rent would be like 4,000 a month. But if you were to buy a multifamily and maybe you were coming out of pocket 2,000 a month, you'd still be reducing, your biggest living expense, for what you'd be paying for rent. So yeah, you're coming out of pocket a little bit, but at least you're reducing your biggest living expense. And like you mentioned, all the other benefits of owning something, the equity, the principal pay down and whatnot. So I think that's the thing that some people miss. They see an investment and they think right off the bat, like they have to be making cash flow on a multifamily when, if they reduce their biggest living expense for themselves, they're still getting a lot of benefits from it.
Oh yeah, I think that's the biggest benefit is just reducing the housing expense to free up extra cash. And the other thing too that a lot of people don't think about is like the more expensive areas, they might not be as good cash flow wise, but you're only if you're only putting 3.5, 5% down, it's not that much more to get into the highest end areas from a dollar out of pocket standpoint, but you're getting way more appreciation and loan pay down and depreciation from the higher price properties. Cash flow is not going to be as good, obviously, but the overall return on investment generally gets a little better as you get into the higher end areas. If somebody's caught up on, say, the cash flow side of it, they might not be getting those benefits. They kind of go, I think it's better to look at the overall return, which is kind of how it shifted for me from the initial house hacks to the last few that I've done.
So you are an amazing, broker, investor, house hacker, and I kind of want to veer off to something else, and I want to know if any of this skills, relate to somehow you're dominating our fantasy football league that we're a part of, and somehow you're still undefeated and it's not even close right now.
I think they translate knowing the value and the who might blossom long term as the season goes on, and keeping tabs on the free agents and who's on the up and up.
Yeah, I was Jeremy had a big injury early in the season. Nick Chubb went down, and I was kind of, you know, excited. Like, yeah, he has to change his team name and everything.
Oh yeah, I had to in my one league I had him. I have him in both leagues. He's one of my favorite, probably argue my favorite player in the league,
Oh,
just because the way he goes about. You know what I mean? Like you can't not like Nick Chubb. But I changed it to half Chubb in my other league because it's a keeper league.
oh, okay. Oh, so did you
So
keep him from the year before in that league?
yeah, he was
Oh,
the
okay.
keeper in that league. Yep. But yeah, that was tough. I was actually at that game. It happened. We were sitting in that end zone that it happened in
Um,
Pittsburgh. Yeah, so it was brutal.
Yeah, man, it's just a violent sport, but it's, especially for running backs, man.
Yeah, the past couple years, a lot of injuries there for sure.
Yeah, but I still think you're cheating somehow. I mean, there's no somebody's gonna have to beat you soon.
Maybe
Maybe
we'll
you'll
see
be
if we
like
can
the
get Patriot.
Patriots. You'll go undefeated the whole year, and then you'll lose in the championship.
I think we got playoffs that are 2 weeks each round, right?
I forget. I just set
I
it
think
up so
so.
quick that I just
Yeah.
whatever the settings were, I kind of left it, and that's why it kind of messed up people in the draft, right? We had like defensive players and people
Yeah,
that,
the linebackers, how the scoring was, and
yeah. Well, because I should have changed it to where it limited how much you could have, but during guys that were auto drafting, they had like ended up with like five linebackers on their team, and it's like, yeah, okay, we gotta change this next year.
I think the initial scoring actually favored safeties because of how it was set up, what you got points for. Whereas the system obviously thought that linebackers were
Mm,
getting the most, which they are now, but I think in the beginning it favored
that's
um,
right. Yeah,
defensive
that's right.
backs. Because I think
Yeah,
the points were just like for interceptions, maybe, and they weren't tackles at the
that's
beginning.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, next year will be better. It'll be a little more organized, I think. But
Yeah,
yeah, still, I don't know. You got to be cheating somehow, though.
maybe.
You
I
had like
can't
double the points of everybody, I think, this past week.
can't reveal my secrets.
So where's the next trip? I see you traveling everywhere. So what's on the plans for you?
We're trying to hit all the national parks, so that's kind of been like the dictates where we go and everything. So I think we've been hitting a lot of them out west the past year. We got the Southwest Companion Pass, so all of our flights are free. So we're kind of taking advantage of that. Um, we're heading out. I think in February or March, going to do Vegas to hit the national parks kind of out there. I think Death Valley is one of them. There's a few out. There's a lot of national parks out west, so probably hit a few more of those in February, March time period is probably the next trip.
Oh, well, you should. I don't know. I'm gonna be in Vegas in February for. I don't know if you follow like the one rental at a time kind of community, Michael Zuber, but he's
Oh
having.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's doing an event. Is that in
yeah,
February?
yeah. Just after the Super Bowl weekend. So
Gotcha.
what holiday is that? President's Day? No, the 19th. So, but that weekend. So Monday's the holiday or Labor. I don't know, but Monday's the holiday. So it's gonna be for that weekend. But yeah, I'll be
Yeah, I
there.
like a lot of the stuff that he pumps out content wise.
Yeah, yeah. But shoot, what was I gonna say? Um, talking about national parks. Oh, I forgot. Do you self-manage your properties or you have a property manager for yours?
I have a property manager for all but like 10 or 12 units. Like I even those ones I have with the management company, so I use all their resources, but I'm still the property manager. But
Mhm.
those units are all renting for like 1,200 or higher. So I still manage the high rent units, which are generally easier to manage, like A class single family homes or townhomes and stuff like that. So those ones I still manage, but everything else I have to fully outsource with the management company. And then I still do leasing for my units, which I don't mind doing. So
So when you travel, how much do you think you spend managing your portfolio?
it's pretty hands off at this point. Um, really, all I get emails from the property manager let me know on maintenance and stuff, or if I need to make a decision. It's just through email, and like I still generally hit an hour or two of emails to keep tabs on things even when I'm gone. Or if I'm gone and the property's vacant, I'll have one of the guys on my team show it because I have a team set up now. So makes it to the point where I'm able to kind of be location independent in a way, which is nice without having to spend too much time when I'm away working. I can keep it to kind of 2 hours or less each day.
Well, that's the benefits of starting young, house hacking and basically building a portfolio, and then it kind of just starts running on its own. And I'm sure you don't want to see expenses come up, but it's kind of like the portfolio kind of pays for it already, right? So you get something and it's like, okay, well, it is what it is, and you gotta fix it or replace it or whatnot. But in the beginning, yeah, it's kind of stressful, but once it gets rolling, then kind of takes care of itself.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of my properties, like the first year or two, you have some road bumps. So once you learn a property, you kind of take care of any of the major things that might need done. It becomes a lot more passive after the first couple years, which I think a lot of people don't realize. They buy a property and they're like, oh, this is a lot of work, but it's usually going to be the first year or two, and then they end up selling it a year later because they think it's a job basically, which it can be at the beginning, but you got to look at the big picture. Everything single property I bought after the first year or two, work out the kinks. It generally runs pretty smoothly once you know the building and kind of how everything operates there, and take care of anything that should be taken care of to make sure that you're not just putting a band-aid on things, but like actually fixing issues that pop up to make sure that it runs smoothly long term. I think all that stuff's important, but you're always going to have stuff involved with it. But like you said, if you buy them right, generally the at a certain point, especially the portfolio basically just supports itself, and it pays the cash flow pays for all the maintenance issues to the point where you don't really have to come out of your own pocket once you get to a certain amount.
Yeah, well, this has been fun. Thanks again for coming on. It's always fun, catching up, and maybe after the fantasy football playoffs, we can bring you back and see if you've won the inaugural championship for our league. And but if anyone wants to reach out, where can they find you?
Social media, probably Instagram or Twitter. It's just Jeremy underscore Taggart. Those probably the two biggest ones I'm active on. And then my email's jeremy@jeremytaggart.com. So those probably be the main ways.
Yeah, I'll put all the links below, and if not, someone just reach out to me, and I send people Jeremy's way also. I kind of refer to him as the kind of the hot shot house hacker in Pittsburgh, and you know, and then Alex, I tell people about Alex. He's like the Yoda. He's like that old
Yeah,
grizzly. He's super wise, but he just straight shooter. He's gonna tell you how it is, and he doesn't
that's
waste
him.
time. Yeah. So I said, do you want the old veteran, the Yoda guy, or do you want the young hotshot guy? Seven house hacks and traveling, going to national parks and whatnot. So, but yeah, it's fun. I mean, they love meeting you guys.
Yep, that's what we do here in Pittsburgh. Pretty much just work with investors. So
All right, man. Well, thanks. It's been fun, and we'll do it again.
yeah, for sure.
Thanks, man.
Yep.